that if you look at the world and what's going on in the world, there's a lot of pressure, it seems like, in the world. And a lot of people are worried about what they're going to do. You know, you look at a lot of the students, and I look at things like all the Occupy Wall Street and all these movements that are going on. And you see a lot of people scared and concerned about their future. And I find that actually kind of interesting, because I'm kind of a libertarian at heart, where I just take charge of my own life, and I just try and make things happen all the time. And I think entrepreneurship falls into that category, where we're all really kind of entrepreneurs, even if we go work for somebody else. I was actually talking to my staff about this morning, that we're all entrepreneurs. It's just if you go work for somebody else, you have one customer, that's your boss, and you've contracted with him for an entire year period of time to work for him. And you know, you could, I guess, technically lose that customer at any time or lose your job at any time. And being an entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, and kind of building a business, I feel like you end up having a lot more control over your life than if you go and work for somebody else. And lots of times when I look at a lot of the people who are complaining right now in the world, I just think if they'd spend some of that time to just go and do, they might not be in the situations that they're in. And I've actually, the only job, well, I've had a couple of jobs, like little jobs in high school, and then I once worked for BYU in a computer lab. Beyond that, I've never worked for anybody besides myself. Doesn't mean I haven't done a lot of different things, but I've always worked on my own. Quickly, I'm going to walk through just a little bit of my history, and I want to do this quickly so that then we can get into some more interesting things. But just so you can kind of know a little bit about my background and kind of where I'm coming from. And feel free to actually ask any questions as we're talking, because I like to be fairly open in the conversations. But I want to walk through quickly my history, and then I want to walk through kind of the 12 steps that you can go down to be an entrepreneur. So instead of being kind of the 12 steps of not being an alcoholic, will be the 12 steps of becoming an entrepreneur. So I came here to BYU. I was exactly where you guys are sitting in these classes, and I was working at a computer lab, and I decided I needed to make a little bit more money. And one thing I know is that I'm willing to pay myself a lot more money than my employers are willing to pay me, if that makes sense, right? Employers, when they have somebody in there, they feel like they're paying out a lot of money. All they're thinking is, man, can I get somebody cheaper to do the same thing? And no matter how much money you're ever making yourself, you only think, how can I make more money, right? I'm excited to try and pay myself $1 million or more dollars a year, where no employer wants to pay anybody $1 million a year, or even a couple $100,000 a year, $100,000 a year. And it's smart for them. They're trying to be efficient in their businesses, but when you're setting your own paycheck, you like as many zeros as you possibly can get on there. So I was at BYU. I started working at a computer lab, and then I just started building websites for people. This is back in 1995. So really kind of internet's just starting to take off. And I met a guy named Josh James. I probably needed to put a new picture of Josh up there, because he's much hairier now with his flowing locks of hair, if anybody's seen him lately. And we started a company called JP Interactive, and we slowly started doing some services for people building websites. When we were building websites for people, we quickly realized that we were just billing time. And that's another thing, like when you think about your income, if it's all tied to the hours that you're working, you can only work so many hours. So we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we leverage our time and start making money while we're sleeping? And so we started coming up with some different ideas. One was a site called Script Search, which was an archive of CGI resources, which are the back-end programs that kind of run the internet, all the MySQL and the PHP scripts. Basically, we had all these scripts that you could view online. And then we had another little product called Superstats that we launched, and that really is what ended up becoming Omniture, but it was just a small counter program. We then started providing more services to people, and and I apologize if anybody wanted to hear a lot of my history because I'm like cramming like 13 years here into a slide, and then we'll go into some things. But as I talk about kind of the steps of being an entrepreneur, I'll look back at some of the stories of Omniture. But so we started realizing that people needed more than stats. We started mycomputer.com, and we ended up with about 11 different products that people could use on their website. That was all oriented towards small businesses. We then decided that wasn't where we wanted to be. The problem was we didn't have enough money to really get the amount of customers that we needed, when you're only billing somebody $20 a month. We actually had a lot of customers. But at first we were free. We had about 2 million customers. Actually, even PC World Magazine at one point rated us one of the hottest sites on the entire internet. We were signing up like 8,000 people a day to our website. But again, most of these were free. The internet crash happened, right, where nobody was buying advertising anymore. So we decided to sell off that business, and we focused on enterprise analytics. And that's where Omniture really came to be. And I don't know how many people here have heard of Omniture. It's now Adobe, the office that's being built up there by the mouth of the canyon. And our main product was called Site Catalyst. So I started that here with Josh James in '96. We took it public in 2006, and then we sold it to Adobe, as they had mentioned when they introduced me, for $1.8 billion in 2009. And we had, over 1,000 employees. I'm not even sure of the exact number. I was always kind of the more product customer guy. Josh always loved the accounting and dealing with investors and all that kind of stuff. So actually, I brought some fun pictures. So there's me starting the company. There's me and Josh at our very first trade show. And then there, you can see me and Josh in the middle on that bottom right picture. That's when we were kind of ringing the bell or signing on NASDAQ. I think that was a year after we went public, like for our secondary offering or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, a lot of fun times and fun experience, and honestly, a pretty crazy roller coaster of a ride. And I could talk for hours about all the crazy things that we had to go through. And after this session 2, we're doing a Q&A session. Is that correct? So, if you guys too have other questions, we can get into some interesting things during that time too. So, what am I doing now? Because I actually left the company in my daily role in November of 2007. The company had gotten fairly large. I love being more in a little bit of a startup environment. I love when I know, and I say startup, but like sub 250 employees, something like that, where you can actually know everybody and really work as a team. And it becomes really difficult when you're flying, all over the world to different offices. You don't even speak the languages of half your employees, and it's still fun. It's a different experience, but I think I'm definitely more oriented towards the earlier stage, being involved in product development and growing a company. So I have a new business with a friend named Rob Ciolis that's called ObservePoint, which we started just a couple years ago. It's been going really well, and it's a little bit of a play kind of off of what Omniture does, where we go and we audit data collection technologies, and so that people can trust the data that they're collecting. Believe it or not, most of these companies out there are tracking all this data, and they don't do anything to validate that it's correct. I mean, it's actually pretty crazy that they don't do that. They check their accounting, right? They have Pricewaterhouse or somebody come in and audit their accounting. Then they'll make $10 million decisions based off of data that they've never even validated was installed correctly. It's probably actually could get some people in trouble, I would think, potentially, but I think people just don't know what they don't know. Lots of times when we even talk with people and say, hey, you know that like 10% of the tags on your website are completely wrong, that they just put you, like with a dead stare, not understanding what you just said to them. So then I've gotten into a lot of real estate, which has been pretty fun to learn kind of a new business and figure out how that stuff works, mainly apartment complexes. And then my very favorite, which has been fun, was I started a model train company with a friend, and that's actually a model that you're looking at right there. And so we build model trains, and that's actually been a tough business, more difficult than I would have thought. I'd never done a product company, and so after doing software, you can't touch software. It's just kind of just there. So I really wanted to get out there and try and figure out, okay, can I build something and can I sell it to consumers? And we've done fairly well, but it's been a neat process to go through. So you don't need something completely fresh, right? I mean, even when Josh and I started Omniture, we weren't the very first people to do analytics. We just started doing it, and then we started trying to do it better. You could make money doing a fence company. You could make money building roofs. You can do anything, right? And you just need to do it better than other people, and you need to take better care of customers. And lots of times when you're small, you have a huge advantage over big companies. If you look at big companies, like the companies that we were competing against at Omniture were companies like IBM. Well, IBM has billions and billions of dollars in revenue. Their analytics business to them was small and insignificant. So if a customer, came in and asked them to do something custom for them, the likelihood of IBM ever even listening to that and changing something for that customer is about zero, right? Where you as a small business just getting started, you're very hungry, and that couple $1,000s means something to you, so you're willing to do anything for it, right? It gives you huge advantage on getting customers. Although it is a certain customer set that you'll get too, that's willing to take a little bit of a risk on a younger business. But your idea that you come up with, the other critical thing is it's just going to be a jumping point and a starting point for you. Josh and I didn't just start Omniture. Does everybody here even know what Omniture is? Anybody? So Omniture was a software company that we tracked visitor behavior on websites. So guaranteed, how many here have been on the internet today? You interacted with Omniture today. I guarantee it. Guaranteed. They track billions and billions of page views a day online. So as you were visiting sites like an eBay or wherever, Omniture's systems were tracking your visitor, your behavior on those websites. We took all that data and provided then reports to these companies on, what pages did people view, how did they go through their conversion processes, all these things. So that's what we did. But we didn't start off like that, right? We just started a business and we started building websites for people, and then we slowly figured out other things. I actually think it's very rare that somebody just comes up with some amazing idea and just does it, and it becomes very successful. You always adapt, and you always are trying to figure out what you're doing. Just like if you wrote a research paper or something, you'd do a rough draft, and then you'd start refining it from there, and sometimes you might even throw it away and come up with a better idea, right? Same concept. But I think the key thing is that you don't have to invent, the cure of cancer. It's great if you do, because that's going to make you a lot of money. Teleportation, too. If anybody in here can do teleportation, $1 trillion idea right there. So write it down, though, and have a plan. So one thing I do is I do write down my ideas, and then whenever I get an idea, I actually start writing a plan. Every year, every single year, I still refine my business plan for each of my businesses that I'm running. And it helps me think through, am I going down the right path still? I'm always questioning myself. I'm always looking at, okay, are we doing what the business needs? Are we really growing? Am I throwing good money after bad? Because sometimes you do this and you go, oh, it's time for a change. This isn't working. And it helps the people in your company also be on the same page as you, right? And know where you're trying to take the company, and it gives you an opportunity to get their input. So we do a planning meeting where I have each of my vice presidents, our team leaders, give their plans to us too and tell us how they see their departments, moving ahead for the next year. And then I also like to do kind of a 5-year, just where do you eventually see each business coming. I do a simple PowerPoint. I don't do the 80-page business plan with all these crazy formulas and things. I mean, nobody reads that stuff. Nobody even who really raises money nowadays does stuff like that. You just make a good presentation, with 20 slides maybe, and it's enough to guide you. Lots of times you have backup resource material, right? I still do like a pro forma in Excel and try and understand where I'm going financially, but it's not necessarily in my little PowerPoint. And then you just got to get going. Everybody that I talk with seems like they're waiting for an angel to descend from heaven and tell them, it is now time to start your business. It's never going to happen. Well, it happens every now and then, but it's never. No, it's no, it never happens ever. And just remember, it's going to be hard. This is not the easy path, right? I think the perceived easy path in life is you've somehow, you're smart and you now deserve $100,000 a year working for somebody else, right? That's kind of the path that a lot of people think happens, but it's not, right? Right now you're going down a path. You're going to go get a job and feel like you're safe, but the reality is going down this path, it might be a little bit harder, but you have at least you're building all this knowledge, you're building up your own customer bases, and you're controlling your destiny completely. But you do need a supportive family. If your spouse absolutely needs like medical coverage and a few things like that, because your first few years of business, you aren't going to have a lot of these things. You're going to be working tons of hours. My first year of business, I made like a whopping $6,000, and my wife and I somehow lived on that. I was fortunate that my wife actually was on full scholarship and stuff, so I didn't have to worry about her schooling. But from eating and living, we lived completely off of $6,000 our first year of marriage. It's pretty good. You know what's funny about that though is I don't think I'm any more happy now than I was that year. It just kind of makes you think about some of those things too. You have your family and you have kind of your basic needs, and you can be pretty happy. And in some ways, actually, I feel like I had way more time back then to do some of the things I enjoy doing. But it's going to be hard, but make sure your family's supportive of it. And then sometimes it takes a couple of tries. I've heard so many people say, I'm going to try this for 2 months. And I'm just like, 2 months? You mean you're going to try this for 6 years? Because it takes time to be doing these iterations and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Josh and I, when we started building websites, but then we did a few twists and turns to get to where we were. How did we go from building websites to all of a sudden being, the analytics powerhouse in the world? They're totally different paths, but there were some hard roads that got us there. There was one time that both Josh and I, we had to mortgage our houses to make payroll, not knowing where the next payroll was going to come. So you need to have a pretty willing spouse there, to let you mortgage your house to make a payroll, not knowing where the next one's coming from. And then getting the right people. And this really can be having the right partner, So for me, Josh and I think we were the best partners I could possibly imagine. We had complementary skill sets, but we both had the same work ethic, the same values. We, I every time, if Josh was working late, I was just sitting there next to him just to be supportive. If I was working late, he was sitting there next to me just to be supportive. It wasn't, oh, hey, yeah, you got this, I'm heading home. Because that's when you're starting a small business and you're sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning while your partner's just back at home sleeping, it starts to really bug you, right? And so you need to have the right people. And that's also with employees. You need to take the time to hire the right people. And that's difficult when you're first getting started because the only people you can afford is basically almost nobody, right? You might be able to get some friends who do some free stuff for you, and then maybe you can pay $7 an hour to some guy to, do some basic stuff for you. And you'll slowly get better and better people as you can afford better and better people. But same thing, they need to be able to handle the startup environment. And a lot of people love that environment. Protect your equity. Be careful about just giving away so much stock in the beginning, because everybody's, when you're getting started, is just going to want a share of the company, and they're going to instantly think that they deserve the same amount that you had. And so you could almost basically lose your entire company in the first year by just giving it out to employees if you're giving them too much. You don't want to give a third of the company to some guy, and then 2 months later you find out that he's totally the wrong guy, and you're like, what do I do? Because I have a guy who owns a third of my company now. He doesn't even work here. It's like you're his slave now for the rest of your life, trying to make him money. So be careful about that. Utilize advisors. You have all these great people here at BYU who can help. You have access to mentors, people like myself and other people on like the founders group here at BYU who can have tons of experience. And that's how Josh and I, got through a lot of things. We used books and mentors to just ask questions. Say, how did you guys do this? Or how did you do that? And then sometimes we listened, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we said, well, I see how that worked in your industry, but in the software, I don't see how that works. But getting more and more information can only help you in building your business. So I also think you try and get to revenue quickly. Especially in software, it's really tempting for software engineers to want to build the perfect system before they ever launch. I'll tell you this, after being involved with Omniture for so many years, we still never had the perfect system. So you just want to launch, iterate quickly. You need to get something that just starts any kind of cash flow coming into the business, because that's your cheapest source of capital into your business is your customers. If you can get customers to pay you, you don't ever have to even raise a dollar. I mean, everybody gets super excited about raising money from VCs. FYI, they're a boss. So do you want a boss? Sometimes you do. Sometimes you need their help. I guess in some ways they're a partner too. They're for sure a partner too. But you definitely are reporting now to somebody. If you could build a business and instantly be cash flowing hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, you wouldn't have to just take anybody's money, right? You could actually still potentially raise money, but do it very smart and raise from the right person who can really bring a lot of value to your company at a great valuation, right? So if you can get revenue coming in, revenue solves all problems, right? Lots of times when everybody, like in a company, they'll be like, oh, if we just had this in the product, it would solve all our problems. I'm always like, no, money solves the problem because we can bring it in and then gives us enough runway to fix whatever software problem you're wanting to wait for launch for, because if you wait too long, you're bankrupt and nobody can get a paycheck. So I look at us, we started a web analytics company from an interactive agency, right? So that was kind of a stepping stone to get there. And really that interactive agency is what funded Omniture for us. Gotta watch your expenses. Expenses can kill you. And lots of times your employees, they'll want to buy the best brand new thing that they could possibly find. Say they're looking for a new printer, and they're going to convince you that the only printer that's a viable option for you is this super high-end one that's $100,000, and you're like, why can't we use a 2-year-old printer to do the same thing? You have to watch your expenses, because when you're a small business, you do not have money, and you aren't the government, so you can't just start printing money, right? So, and nobody's going to give it to you. So you just have to figure it out. So don't overbuild. Don't sign like long-term lease agreements and things like that. I've seen a lot of companies come in and they're so confident that they're going to be huge. They come in and lease an office space that's 4 times the size of what they currently need, and it basically bankrupts them. You're like, why didn't you just go in somewhere, smash into a small office, go on a month-to-month lease so that you can slowly grow as you get more and more customers. And just watch that debt, because debt can kill you if you take on debt. I've seen a lot of companies where they'll do like some bridge financing or get a whole bunch of debt because they didn't like the valuation that they were getting, and all of a sudden they can't raise more money in the future because the new guy who wants to invest money, he doesn't want to just pay off all this debt. He wants to put money in and have it go into building the business, not paying off what already was done. So listen to your customers. One thing about listening to customers, you need to listen to customers because they'll tell you new ideas and where you should be going in your business, but be careful because lots of times they aren't super visionary, right? They'll tell you how to iterate your current product and like what you should be doing with it, but they won't necessarily tell you how to really change the world. I think sometimes you can find a few customers who can think like that, but most of them, they're really hands-on, at least in some of the software world. And if you talk with them, they're like, oh man, if you really just moved this button to here, I'd be so happy. And that's great and all, and you want to fix things from a usability standpoint, but they aren't going to say, oh, have you guys ever thought about doing XYZ that changes the whole paradigm of web analytics? It's very rare that I've had a customer do something like that. But if you find customers who have that vision, it's great to try and get them on like a customer advisory board or things like that. And then also build what they'll pay for. Lots of times you'll hear people complain and they want a whole bunch of things, but then you say, well, hey, will you pay us an extra $10 a month for that? Oh, no, that's not worth $10 to me. Well, then, you have to then really address, okay, well, is it worth spending all that time and money if they must not really want it if they aren't even willing to pay for it. And then also, I put translate what they really want. And what I mean by that is all the time I'd have a customer tell me, I need a bicycle. And you're like, I'm speaking figuratively, honestly. They didn't want a bicycle. But, I need a bicycle. And I'd be like, a bicycle? That makes no sense. What do you want a bicycle for? And I'd have to really dig in. And they go, oh, because I want to go to Salt Lake. And you go, oh, you want to go to Salt Lake? Well, why don't you take my car? Right? They tell you, I found that customers tend to tell you how they think you should solve their problem instead of telling you what their problem really is, so that you can then tell them the best way to solve that. Because lots of times your expertise is so much greater, their minds haven't been able to comprehend how to solve the problem the best, especially in the technology field. And then focus on the right thing was the final thing I had on here. And that's, if you look at like us, where we built websites and then we transformed and we started looking at different opportunities, lack of focus can be very dangerous in a business, and entrepreneurs are notorious for having like 10 things going on, and they never get anywhere because they have too many things that they're trying to do. And so it's okay to be looking at different opportunities if you think that what you're doing isn't the right thing. So like for us, we were building websites and we just weren't really happy with how that was going. So we were starting to try these different businesses. But once we found one that we really liked, we just stopped building websites and focused completely on it. And what's interesting is then that was mycomputer.com, and once we found out that wasn't even really what we liked, and we liked this little subset of our business, which was enterprise analytics, we sold that and focused completely on enterprise analytics. And that's finally, like 6 years into our business, when we just literally just started growing like crazy and like doubling revenue every single year. And it was actually a pretty amazing thing to see. So culture is also really important to protect in your business. Lots of times, you get certain companies and customers who want to work with you because of a culture that you create. You're offering a great product, but they also just like how you interact with them and stuff like that. And as you grow, it becomes very difficult to protect that culture and keep that culture because you're hiring people from all kinds of other business cultures, right? And so people who come from, like in our case, from Oracle act completely different than people who come from Microsoft or people who come from Apple or wherever they happen to come from. And so you have to educate them on how you want your business culture to be. And for some of you who know Omniture, we were very well known for kind of our culture and for how we acted and what we did. We had green everywhere, and and we just really tried to create this positive culture of working hard, over delivering to customers. And then our other thing is we had a no jerk policy. It's like, you're a jerk, I don't care who you are, you can't work here. So And there was even situations where we had like some of our very top salespeople that we've let go because they were just jerks. You know, that's hard to do. Believe me, you're like, wait, this guy makes me a lot of money, you know, but it's just not worth it. Life's kind of too short. So getting the word out, you have to. This one sounds obvious. Doesn't this sound obvious? But now that I'll give you guys a few scenarios, and you'll start to hear other entrepreneurs around here in like the business school talk about their ideas, and you go like, oh wait, you guys are so funny because you don't talk about it. Like people, I find these small businesses, like guys will come to me at the business school and they'll like want me to sign an NDA, and they won't talk about anything about their business until you do these things. It's like they're hiding it because they're so worried like somebody's going to grab their idea and take off with it. But if you don't just openly, don't share your secret sauce, but talk about your business. Get people excited about your business. Start getting people on board with your business. Because if you don't talk about it, there's another 15 people that were inspired with the same idea the same day, and all of them are moving forward. So you need to get as many people as you possibly can on board your ship as fast as you can, right? And so you want to go out of your way. You want to start building relationships. You want to start talking with people. You want to get people excited about your business, because the more people who know about it, the more potential customers. And again, if there's something super secret, yeah, don't tell them that. But I've found a lot of people who won't even tell you what they're doing at all. Like nothing, like not even the industry before like you sign an NDA, and you're just like, I don't know what you guys, I sit there and go, I don't need anything from you, sir. Why would I sign anything with you? Just, if you want to sell me, sell me. Tell me what you're trying to sell, but I'm not interested. The other thing, build relationships. Everybody's somebody. Always treat everybody with respect. That person who's serving you in the restaurant, who knows? That might be your next investor's son, right? And hopefully when you run into the house and you were talking to that investor and you had just left no tip and said, you're a jerk on his waiter thing, the likelihood of you getting that investment is about zero. Obviously using social networking, paid marketing, however you need to do it, set up your budgets, just start screaming from the rooftops about your business. It's especially a lot of the PR stuff. That's like the best. You get an article written up about you. It didn't cost you anything, and it's better than 10 ads that you could ever purchase. So the other thing is just communicating. And what time are we supposed to end? Sorry.
10 till.
Okay. It's communicating. Really talk with your people. They want your acceptance as their kind of leader in that business. And it's important for you to make sure that they understand that you do value them. And how you do that is communicating with them and talking with them, and, walking in their offices and making sure, saying, you know what, I loved that ad that you did last month. That was a great ad. And hey, how do you think things are going in the company? Just all these things, communicating with your employees, because those employees know more about your business than you do lots of times, because they're down in the trenches talking with customers. And there's so many CEOs and executives that sit up in their white tower just thinking that the business is, invincible. And you then go down to the front lines with all the customer service people, and they're like, oh my gosh, everybody hates our product. They buy it because it's the only thing out there. But man, if there's ever an opportunity that they could switch, they'd switch in a heartbeat. Those are the last things you want to hear, right? But then that CEO just thinks sales are great, everything's great. But so talk and communicate with your reports and with the people in the company. And then answer your email. I have to admit, I get so much email, I don't always answer everything, but I really try. Like, even if any of you guys emailed me, you might not get the email that you want back from me, but I will normally always answer. Because I get like 3 people who ask me to lunch every single day. I can't do it, but I'll reply back and say, hey, it was nice to meet you via email. Unfortunately, I can't do lunch, but good luck with you in your business. At least acknowledging them, than having people sitting there thinking, what's going on? Why I haven't heard anything, and they'll keep trying to contact you. It's just better to communicate with people, tell them even things that they don't want to hear, and just be honest with them, than just assume, it'll just go away. If I just leave it, it'll just go away. And then, I already talked about listening to your employees. Listen to your gut. I've made a few bad decisions before where my gut was really telling me to do a few things, and I had other employees just pushing really hard that we should do something. And sometimes I think that it's your business. You just need to go with, even if you have a few other people telling you to do something. If you really feel strongly about something, try it. I guess you might regret some of that, but normally it's the opposite. Normally, actually, I more regret when I didn't go with my gut. I do think a business partner is really valuable too. A business partner is expensive, right? I mean, you're giving up half of your company at the very beginning to have some partner. But that moral support that you get out of that is, I think, invaluable. And I think the likelihood of you being successful with a partner is much higher than if you have nobody. And then listen to your spouse. My final thought here before we conclude is to save. Your business is going to have ups and down times. And there was a few times at our company that we had to take investment and valuations we did not like because we had not saved anything for downtimes. And literally, if we had just saved, a few $100,000, we probably could have made it through some of our really tough times. But we had this kind of feeling like it was just always going to be going so perfectly, and it didn't. I don't really know a business where it's always just gone perfectly. I mean, I guess maybe you get some real outliers like Google where they just took off and just nothing ever stopped them. But it's just like in life, don't spend everything you make. The very best thing, even when you start making money, is live like you're making half what you make, so that there's just no question about whether or not you could shake up your business or things like that. Like if you thought, oh, I really want to do this with my company, but let's say you're addicted to making your few $100,000 a year, you're like, oh, wow, well, I can't change because I can't risk losing that. Where if you could live off a lot less money, you could say, okay, for the next 2 years, I can reinvest in my company and put everything into this change that we're wanting to do and things like that.